Passion Harvest. Hello, passionate listeners and watchers. Welcome to Passion Harvest. I am Louisa, your host, International Passion Ambassador. Thank you so much for joining us. Wherever you are in the world, I am exhilarated about my guest today, and his name is Tim Freke. Tim has been exploring spirituality since a spontaneous awakening when he was 12 years old. Tim is a pioneering philosopher whose best-selling books, inspirational talks, and life-changing events have touched the hearts and minds of hundreds of thousands of people worldwide. Tim is the winner of MBS Writer of the Year Award 2020 Kindred Spirit magazine and one of the 100 most spiritually influential living people on the 2020 list in Watkins magazine. He's the author of 35 books. Wow, that's a lot. Translated into 15 languages, and his latest book offers a revolutionary approach to awakening for the 21st century and a visionary new understanding of the nature of reality. Tim is the creator of Univigilism, a deeper way of living, and the founder of the International Community of Unividuals, which combines evolutionary science and deep spirituality to offer a visionary new understanding of the nature of reality and the purpose of life. Tim leads experiential deep awakening retreats internationally. This is his story and this is his passion. Tim, I'm so excited and honored to have you on the show. Welcome to Passion Harvest.
Thank you. Thank you. Lovely. One should never listen to one's own bio. It always feels like, who is that guy? Wow.
That's you. 35 books. That's amazing.
Yeah, it is a lot, isn't it? Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. And what is really exciting for me is that I genuinely think the last one is the best. And that's a lovely position. I'm pleased to be able to say that.
Well, I can't wait to discuss it. But I'd love to dive right in because, well, we have a limited time frame and I've got so many exciting topics. Your spontaneous awakening when you're 12 years old. Briefly, if you don't mind discussing what that was.
No, not at all. Well, it was a very long time ago, as you can tell. But I grew up in a little town in the west country of England, a tiny little place. And for whatever reason, Louisa, I was always a very curious child. And it felt like the universe was a gigantic question. And I had this, from as early as I can remember, this kind of confidence that if there was such a big question, there must be such a big answer. And eventually, when I was around 12 years old, I would sit on this hill overlooking with my dog, just like taking the dog for a walk, but sitting down and just thinking about life and death and suffering and what it was all about. And one day something happened. Yeah, it was like the feeling I had. And what's fun about it really is that I wrote about it at the time. So I've actually got some reference points where I can go back and go, oh yeah, that's young Tim there. I've got some other things which are a little bit more, juvenile. But there was something else going on as well. I was a 12-year-old, but underneath there was something else, and something happened. That's how it felt at the time. So looking back, I'd now say that I experienced what I think of as a deep awake state. So it felt like my whole consciousness, my brain, the top would come off my head, and suddenly I was full of the sky. And the biggest thing that I wrote about at the time was love, just like the whole universe was pulsating with love. And it made a massive impression on me. And one of the big things it did for me is it introduced me to an idea which I still have, that ultimately the answer I was looking for wasn't a set of words. It was actually a direct experience of something. It was a deeper way of experiencing life. And that set me off on this crazy journey that you've written all these books and everything, which has really been like, what the hell happened? How can I experience it again? How can I go deeper? And how can I share it with others? And that's what I've been doing.
What a deep and curious 12-year-old you are. You were, and you're obviously still very curious. I love how you said it's the emotional experience, because sometimes the emotional signature of the event or the experience, it's impossible to put in words.
Yeah. It is, but that was what left its big impression. It still does, really. I mean, I love philosophy, and I'm writing about meaning and understanding, but the root of it is in mystery and this experience of love or benevolence, because that's what really transports you to a place where that's what gives me the confidence. It's the experience is so powerful that it left me then, and as I came back to it again and again, with this, well, the word really I think is faith, but it's not faith in a dogma. It's faith in the goodness of existence despite everything, because God knows there's plenty there's plenty of bad things. Mm. But despite all of it, when you hit these deep awake states, there's this feeling of it's all, one of the books I wrote with a dear friend who I've been traveling with since I was a teenager, actually, exploring this mystery that we're in right now. And we wrote a book on Gnostic Christianity, which is one of my bestseller with him. And we were looking for this ancient idea of gnosis, where you just have a knowledge of an experiential awakening and you know something. And we both sat down at the end and said, well, look, can we just say it in, what is it? What's the essence of it? And it sounds completely banal, but what we came up with was, everything's okay. it was like, yeah, it's like that. It's like it's like, despite everything, it's okay.
It's okay.
It's okay. And that's the thing you really need to know.
Everything's going to be okay as well. Do you just think all the time?
Not all the time.
But a lot. I mean, it reminds me of when I interviewed Raymond Moody, and he said, I just can't understand people that aren't curious.
Yeah. Well, I remember reading Raymond's book avidly when it had just come out in the back of the car, just sitting there in this little thing. I couldn't stop reading it, and just like, what is this? I mean, that was a huge moment with suddenly we were aware of near-death experiences, which no one knew about.
This is a big question, and I guess you could go on for hours, but what you talk about the nature of reality. What is reality that we perceive as reality?
I can make a stab at it, Louisa, because I have been thinking about it for a long time. I think when I look at the moment, I see that it's a process. It's flow. So it's change. And that the things that have happened in the past have happened for good, and the future doesn't exist. But each moment is the realization of something new based on the past. So the past, in a way, doesn't pass. It's still here. It's accumulating, really, because each moment contains it. Like this moment contains the last moment, and this moment contains you and I emailing and everything that's happened. So really what's happening here is everything that's ever happened to Tim is meeting everything that's happened to Louisa. So my hypothesis is that fits beautifully with this new understanding that we've had for about 100 years now in science, which is the whole universe is evolving. So I think what we're in is a process of the realization of potentials in ever more emergent ways, so that we've gone from literally 14 billion years ago, pretty much hydrogen, nothing much else, hydrogen and a bit of helium. Well, that's turned into you and me. That's our present scientific understanding. So that gas has become you and me, which is a phenomenal thought. And that we're still in the same process, that's got us here. And each moment, it's becoming something new. And occasionally there's big jumps, like with the emergence of life and the emergence of consciousness, sentience, psyche, imagination. And during the whole of that process, we've gone from 10 billion years of the evolution of physics, and then 4 billion years of the evolution of life. And then right at the end of that process, there's the evolution of this thing in science, they call it the psyche, this non-material realm of meaning that you and I are actually registering these ideas in. I mean, I'm moving my mouth and I'm vibrating the air and it's going through all the electronics to the other side of the world. But all of that's encoding something which has no form in matter, an idea. And that's the latest thing to arrive. And the word psyche is the Greek word, psyche. It just means soul. So the whole narrative we have is 14 billion years to the evolution of soul. And now we have soul. We have this thing which is not made of matter. And that, I think, is what we're in.
And do you think we each have an individual soul? If
yes.
You want to call it, yes.
Yes. I think, but like everything, it's all one. So it's both individual and all one. So the whole process has been 14 billion years of individuating. So you and I are far more individual than if you compared two hydrogen atoms. They're pretty much the same. But we're quite different. And the more complex and individuated things become, the more conscious they become. So I would describe, another way I describe the nature of reality is, this is the one in relationship with itself through everything, including us. So we are the one in relationship with itself.
And since we perceive ourselves as individual, my reality based on my experiences and my memories and my consciousness is even though I'm talking to you now, well, I think we are talking, it's very different to your perception.
Yeah, everything is perceiving uniquely. That's what's so amazing. So, the plant is also the one in relationship with itself, but it's perceiving the world in a very different ways to us as human beings, let alone a hydrogen atom. But you and I are not just perceiving it differently because we have slightly different senses. I have to put these on to let it focus and all that, but also the thoughts we have. And anyone who's been exploring philosophy or spirituality soon discovers how you think governs what you perceive. And if you think in new ways, suddenly a whole new world opens up. And if you change state, like happened to me when I was 12, suddenly you perceive reality with new eyes. It's like you're in a completely expanded appreciation of what exists. So all of this is part of that one evolutionary process. And I think we're making the journey as individuals. But the big jump which is happening right now, when you talked about Univigilism and the community of Unividuals, here's a little word I made up because I couldn't find a word.
I love it.
It's a nice word, isn't it? And the idea is, look, what's happening is that we're evolving to another level right now. And it's been happening for a while, and it probably will take a long time to happen, but it is happening. From individuals to unividuals, where a unividual is an individual conscious of unity, conscious of that oneness. So when that awakening state that I tasted for the first time when I was 12, one of the things that marks it out, and the mystics throughout the ages have said, is you suddenly go, oh, it's all one. So I'm an individual, but actually I'm like a particular branch on one tree, and I'm relating to itself. And when you get that, there's this shift. And I think that's what spiritual awakening essentially is, to get that shift.
I'm just backtracking, and I want to go back onto this, but you talk about thoughts, and I guess despite what happens on our external landscape, we get to choose our thoughts. And if with the unividual or the collective approach, are our thoughts our own?
No, they're a mixture. Everything is. So one of the things which I use a lot when in looking at things is what I call paralogical thinking, or both and rather than either or. So our thoughts are neither our own, but neither are they not our own. It's kind of combined. So I mean, every word I've said since we've spoken has been said by somebody else, and each word somebody said it for the first time, didn't they? Every single word was said for the first time once, and then we've picked them up and repeated them. So we're part of a collective, just like the clothes we wear is collective, but it's a collection of individuals. And the same, I think, with our words and our thoughts. I think we share ideas. And I think also, some of the ideas that I work with, I find out years later has been thought of by somebody else or at the same time, because we are connected. And the thoughts, when they come, it's like thoughts arise, don't they? And then we get the chance to choose what we follow. And I think that's the key thing. And then we have to choose, is that a deeper thought? Like anyone listening to this now, they've got to weigh it up. Is this guy full of bullshit? Is this, another, or is there something here that might be of interest to me? And they'll compare it with their old ideas, and there might be some resonance, that'll help, or there might be some dissonance. And then they've got to decide, do I follow down this new route with the dissonance because it might lead somewhere better? And we're doing that all the time.
Very interesting. And I just want to ask you about the soul. And I think you gave a great analogy. Sure. Can't remember what interview it was. You talk about the soul like a computer. I thought that was do you mind just describing that? Because that was such a great way to.
Yeah, well, there's an example actually, Louisa. I wrote about that and been talking about that, and then I found a really hard-nosed, if you like, philosopher who works in science using exactly the same metaphor. So it was like, okay, right. So this is not so a way out. And what basically both of us are saying here is, as an analogy, think of the body like the hardware and the psyche like the software. And in a very realistic way, that's what's happening. So right now we're passing software between us. Our hardware's not changing. We're not passing our hardware between us. And if the hardware gets damaged, the software won't work very well. But the software is fundamentally independent. So here's an idea, the idea of the psyche being software. I take the idea. Where is it? Well, it's nowhere. Is it those words? No, I could say it in French. I could write it down. I could type it to you. It's not any of the symbols. It's an idea. And an idea, what's it made of? It's not made of anything. It's made of imagination. It's an imaginal level of reality. That's where we've ended up. You can't see it. It doesn't exist in space, which is why I can pass it to you so easily. And what that does, it does two things. One, it helps you to see that this imagination, the great thing that the spiritual traditions teach, which is different to modern science, and I think the spiritual traditions are better on this, is that the domain of the soul, the psyche, isn't just a byproduct of the body. It's actually a whole level of reality. The ancient Egyptians call it the Duat. In Tibet, it's called the Bardos. In South America, the Kogi, Colombia, call it the Aluna. It's millions of names. The spirit realms, heaven. So the traditional idea in spirituality is like, well, that exists. And if you go out and explore it, it does. If you meditate, if you go for journeys, you take ayahuasca, you do all the crazy things that I've done. I'm sure you've done a lot as well. It's huge out there, isn't it? The world of the soul is as big as the world of the body. We're
not separate.
Doesn't seem to have a limit. It's just huge. So the big idea underneath Soul Story, my latest book, when you said what's reality, is what I want to do is I want to say to science, the process of evolution, which you describe so beautifully, it doesn't stop with biology and then a side effect, which is the psyche. It's actually led to the evolution of this independent domain of the software, this independent domain of the imagination. So when you talked about Raymond Moody earlier, what the hell's happening there when people have near-death experiences? Well, the reductionist science view is, well, it's just a byproduct of the brain. We don't understand it. It's a bit weird.
Yeah.
But of course, if you look at the evidence, it's overwhelming. It's like, no, something is happening here. So then you can go, oh, well, maybe this level, maybe it's like my computer now. The software, it can exist independently. So I'm looking at you right now. I had a computer problem earlier today, but it was okay because it was all backed up on the cloud. Well, what if we're backed up on the cloud? What if our existence, we exist as souls in the body with the hardware, but also independently, so that what happens with death is the experience of the imagination continues. The imaginal experience we're having already, we're already in it. We're in it now. We're passing all the interesting things that are happening in that domain right now, in the domain of psyche or soul, is that continues. In fact, it gets deeper. Because, like when you go to sleep at night, if you think, I'll be going off soon, you're just starting the day. But, when I go to sleep, I go off I lose all my sensory consciousness and I go into a dream, and it's vivid, really vivid. It's a world. So I think that's what's happening with death. We're just going, we're taking all of our this will be dead. So the sensory consciousness will go, the ability to sense things will stop, no hardware. But the ability to imagine, and in a collective way, so like a collective dream, seems to continue. But the difference between what I'm saying, just to tie it right back around to what spirituality has said in the past, is that the traditional story says that's always existed, and you and me are souls, essentially, and we've fallen into the body, and the body's a tomb, and we're trapped in it, and this is Maya, samsara, it's illusion, it's a bad place. We need to free ourselves from captivity and get back to the non-material realm. Mm-hmm. Whereas what I'm saying is the other way around, much more optimistic. I'm saying, no, we haven't fallen from that. We're growing into that. That's what this whole process is leading to. Right. It's leading to the immortality of the soul. It's leading to us establishing ourselves in the realm of the psyche.
Very interesting. And what are your thoughts on reincarnation?
Well, instinctively, I've been around spirituality for a long time, and I've seen a lot of nonsense, and I've probably seen more nonsense around reincarnation than anything. I've seen it used manipulatively. Oh, we've met in a past life, or all that stuff. Yeah. Despite which, I think we should take it seriously. With a lot of care as to what we do. I think the psyche, the software, is able to maintain itself for a bit. But it hasn't left this. It's like jumping off the ground. You're actually flying for a short while, and then you come back to the ground, and something like that. That we're able to go into this realm of the imagination very deeply and connect with the light and all of the things that people describe. But then we will find ourselves coming back in, and again we can demystify it, because if you go, well, look, literally, when this computer here is not a new one now, but when it was new, I just downloaded all the stuff from the last one.
Right.
And so you could say it's still is it the same computer? Well, yes and no. An upgrade. Yeah, exactly. But it's
part of evolution,
a continuation. And I think that's what we're doing. I think, there's one story of which these lives become chapters, a bit like, again, in a dream. If you think of all the dreams you've ever had, and some of them, I'm sure if you were like me, you weren't even Louisa, you were somebody else, or in a different country, or all sorts of mad things. And none of the dream people knew about each other. But they're all you. And when you wake up, you go, yeah, no, they're all me. Yeah. But at the time, you don't do that. At the time, you're not in, I'm not there fighting a war in the First World War thinking, I'm the same guy that dreamt I stole an aeroplane in another dream. And then, it's like, you don't know that. But then when you wake up, you do. You go, oh, yeah, yes. They're all aspects of the one soul.
Gosh, you're explaining this so well.
Oh, thank you.
I've just lost my train of thought. I was going to ask you an important question. So each incarnation potentially we come for the evolution growth of our.
Yeah, I think so. I think we are part of the same process that's been going on for 14 billion years has led to us. And that the biological evolution is still going on, but it's fairly slow. Physical evolution is still going on, but it's very slow. But the evolution of the soul is exponential. It's happening at a phenomenal rate.
And I mean, I love the idea that consciousness is already there and we can tap into. I mean, we don't necessarily need to learn to understand it if we're able to tap into deeper states of consciousness. But why, in your opinion, do you think some people are more, I won't use the word evolved, but able to tap into deeper states of consciousness or the psyche than others?
I think the great secret which has emerged with I think what consciousness is paying attention. I think whatever you pay attention to, you're conscious of, and it's like a focused subjectivity, and the rest becomes unconscious. Like, I'm very conscious of you, and until I thought about it, I wasn't conscious of my family in my house at the bottom of the garden. But now I'm thinking about them, so I'm conscious of them. So wherever my attention goes, I'm conscious, and the rest becomes unconscious, at least for a while. And the power of the attention, I think, is whatever you do with it, it brings things into HD. They suddenly become vivid. Like, you're vivid to me.
You're vivid to me as well.
Thank you, because I'm giving you my attention, and vice versa. And I think that what happens with us is that whatever we pay attention to grows. So if in this life or in previous lives you've paid attention to waking up to oneness or exploring deeper spiritual states, you're just better at it. The same way that if someone's paid attention to music or playing the piano or sport or anything, they will tend to get better at it. So I think, yes, I do think that, but it's not an elitist thing. It's not like, well, some people are more evolved. It's like they're more evolved in that way. And that's the way that interests me. So I like that. But there's other ways to evolve too. And some people, what I like about the Unividual thing, Louisa, is it's quite different to the traditional idea, say, of enlightenment. Because the idea of enlightenment is that there's a state, it's a very Indian idea. You don't get it anywhere else, really. There's a state, we've fallen into this, you can escape. And once you've escaped, you have escaped. That's it, you're finished. You've arrived. This isn't like that at all. This is going, no, there's an ongoing evolution in every direction going on here. And when you become conscious of your connectivity to the world, to the universe, and to everyone, there's this huge benevolence, this love, which naturally arises from the connection. But you may not think in terms of spirituality. I know well, my mum is my prime example. She's my biggest teacher. She wasn't particularly spiritual. She was just a really good person. And she just knew this stuff. I don't know how she knew it, but she just knew it. And she thought she was a completely ordinary woman in every way. But wherever she went, people went, oh, that was what happened then. But she wasn't enlightened, or she was just a unividual. She was an individual who knew that she was serving the one. She was linked to everything. And she wouldn't have said those words. That would not remotely have.
No, they're your words. But so
they're my words.
So what are the traits to embrace univigilism?
I think the biggest one is, I used to describe it as big love because it's just this enormous love. But I think it maybe an even better way of describing it that I've been playing with recently is to call it that there's a universal benevolence. It's like the love is huge, but it comes and goes. You can't live in that. I'd be mush. The idea of going to see my bank manager when I was feeling the big love, it's just like, I'd be like, money. Yeah. So, but there is something. There's something which there's something which stays the same, even when I'm kind of irritated. And that's that there's a huge wishing well for everything and everyone that arises from this state of oneness. So I think one of the telltale signs is really beyond ideas or theories or anything, is that you just sense there's a goodness in somebody because they feel connected and they wish well for others. I think that's the biggest telltale sign. And I also think it's far more widespread than we realize. And I think it's been growing steadily and fast over my lifetime. I think there's a lot of people who feel it, actually.
I'm feeling the love now. It's a beautiful way to describe it. What about individuals that, I don't like to use the word inherently, but aren't inherently positive individuals?
They aren't positive? You mean
Yes.
they feel pessimistic, or they're
yes, or
depressed,
you probably think, I don't like that person. I don't think that person's a good person.
Okay, right.
I'm trying to put it in a politically correct way.
Correct way. It's one of the things I like about this evolutionary understanding is it just makes it clear that, well, you've got to live with all the other levels of evolution. I have to live with matter, and no matter how awake I am, that's going to fall. And you know what? It's going to fall again. It's going to keep falling because that's that level of evolution. I have to live with my body. It needs constant attention. And the older I get, the more attention it needs. It's like, it's a great blessing. It's a bit of a curse sometimes. That's biology. And it's going to play out its days, and then it won't work anymore. That's biology. And then the same with society. There's people still living in the Middle Ages out there. And they just are. They're living in a combative place where history is not pleasant. It's a place you don't want to live. And some people are still in those mindsets. And I guess that will slowly change, but it'll take a while. So what we have to do is establish how that we respond differently. And just to go back to the Gnostics, that incredible line in the Gospels where Jesus is made to say, love your enemies. What a transition point in the whole of history that is.
Yeah,
when we come close to it, haven't we? Just like, wow, what an idea that is, to just drop that into the evolutionary stream. And there you go. There's the answer. It's like, okay.
And I think you said there was no endpoint. So there is no endpoint to the Univigilism, all of this capacity for love.
Well, if there is, I don't know what it is, because it's like I'm just a little guy here in the middle of it all. And
a curious little person.
Yeah, really. And there's something about if you're an evolutionist, or if you see novelty, new things constantly emerging, you genuinely don't know what the future holds. So let alone what's going to be in 100 years' time or 1,000 years' time, or whatever that could be, because it will literally be something we can't imagine, just as no other human beings apart from those who've lived in our lifetimes would possibly imagine that I could be talking to you like this in Australia. It's just like, it's impossible to think that, but we're just taking it for granted now. And
yes.
And our psyches, our souls are connecting right now on the other side of the planet. Wow. And that has come from the imagination. That's come from the psyche. Everything we've done culturally. It's all come from the imagination. We've used that incredible non-material domain of ideas to transform the material world.
Very interesting. Gosh, I'm going to be thinking about this interview for a long time. I've got another question. What do you think about soul groups, or why are we sometimes attracted, not even romantically, but to particular individuals more than others? Sometimes, we can talk to someone for hours or not.
I think there's probably different reasons. I think sometimes my sense in my life has been, sometimes there is just a resonance. It's like you found similar things, or, you like when two people like the same piece of music, suddenly you can go, oh yeah, and you meet on that place. And so if you have the same ideas, you can meet there. But also, I would say, there's many people actually, but there's two people that come to mind for me that I've literally been doing this with since I was a teenager. And I still do it with them. By doing it, I mean getting together and going, wow, life, what have you made of it so far? And we're just, we have the same things happen to us more or less at the same time, even if we don't see each other for a long period. It's quite uncanny. So my sense is, yeah, we just known each other. There's some strange connection. We all feel it. We've always felt it. There it is. It's like we're old friends, and we started as old friends. We were already old friends when we started.
Maybe you've lived many lives together. That's the familiarity.
It wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me at all. No.
So, well, thank you. That I think that's a wonderful explanation. Your International Community of Unividuals. What's that about?
It's only just set it up. It's a really sweet thing, because I'm developing, from my latest book, Soul Story, I'm working on a new thing, which is to try and give it a name, Univigilism. And it's an idea. What I want to do is express a philosophy and practices, because most of what I've done over the years has been practical. It's about, this is how you can experience. I want people to experience the big love. Really, that's
because it's great
really
to talk about it, but then it's like, okay, well, now what do I do?
So that's been the key, and a lot of I do with that is around connection. But having been, if I'm honest, really surprised at how well the experiential stuff worked, because when I was younger, it just happened. It wasn't like I could make it happen. It just happened, and then it stopped, and then it would happen, and then gradually I found ways that I could introduce it to people and myself. So there's that side, and then wanting this philosophy which brings together science and spirituality, because I think spirituality needs to move on. It needs to keep evolving. It needs a major upgrade. So I'm trying to contribute to that. And so what I wanted to do was gather people around me who were interested in the same thing, who were interested both in this particular philosophy and this approach, and the practice of becoming a unividual, actually experiencing that and taking it out into the world. So it's a tiny little group of people all over the world, which is lovely.
Well, it's not that
got
tiny.
A group in Japan as well.
Yeah.
And we get, and it's kind of like friends, really, because it means I'm trying out new ideas all the time, because I'm really trying to push the boundaries of my own understanding. And it means,
well, maybe they're not new ideas.
Oh no, that's right. The new ideas to me.
Yeah.
And
you've tapped into.
Probably. It's like you can definitely, right. You can tell when an idea's got legs, as they say. That it's like, oh, follow that.
It's exciting. Yeah.
Oh, it's just the most thrilling thing.
Oh, you're passionate about it.
That's beautiful. Definitely, completely, obsessively so.
And this is what the term you refer to as awakening for the 21st century.
Yeah, exactly. I think the awakening to the oneness of the universe people have been talking about it for a long time, but it's usually been in a context, like I said, of a mythology of the fall rather than an optimistic philosophy of evolution. And so that we're already there, but we've fallen from it, rather than, no, we're growing into it. So I'm wanting to recast awakening. I was very influenced, my contemporaries have all been very influenced by Indian philosophy, some of which is great, some of which a bit like Western religious philosophy. It's bits in it which are just sublime, but there's other bits you want to leave behind. And there's a lot of stuff now in that I think we need to leave behind. So we need a new paradigm, as they say, a new understanding. and one that can really give us the meaning that we need in our lives.
So I just have to ask, I'm very interested, just briefly, what are some of the tools you offer for awakening or Univigilism or the
Yeah.
experiential offerings?
Well, meditation, of course, but a particular take on it, a particular way of approaching it. I mean, but first and foremost, Louisa, I do think we're all different. I encourage people to experiment, and I offer various things that I've experimented with. And, it's not like a prescribed thing where it's like, this is the technique. And I think that's a real mistake. I think we're all quite different. We experience things in different ways, but there's a commonality which we can meet in. So, but with all of that proviso, the thing that has really worked incredibly powerfully, and is even now working on Zoom, I'm shocked to say, is connecting. So 20 years ago, by accident, I did something which human beings have obviously been doing forever, but I'd never done before or heard of anything in the spiritual world I moved in. I just sat people down and got them looking at each other. And something happened. And what I'll do now when I do the retreats is I will get a whole group of people and we'll work up to creating, beautiful environments and beautiful music, because music really is in deep magic. It's a very high level of the psyche. And I'll get people to just hold hands and look in each other's eyes for 2 or 3 minutes.
I've done that.
And then
it's confronting, isn't it?
Oh, but if you do it in the right way, it's like suddenly at a moment, everything just goes. And so you'll do it with one person, and then the next person, and then the next person, and then the next person. And by the end, I would say 99% probably of people because what's happening is you're noticing, you start maybe thinking, look, you're looking at someone's face, like I'm looking at your face now, but I'm looking at a screen. So I'm seeing digital representation of your face.
Right.
But if so there's your lovely face. It's completely unique, it's beautiful. But what I'm connecting with is your soul. I can't see that. I couldn't see it if I was with you. Why? Because it hasn't got a color. It's got no shape. It's not made of matter. You can't see it
with your physical eyes.
You can't. And yet there it is, we're connecting. So you just sit there with, oh my God, we're connecting soul to soul here. And then at a certain moment, it's the one connecting with itself. And there's one of you. And then there's two of you. And then there's one of you. And then there's one and two of you. And you just, and then the love is how the oneness feels, I think. That's just the way it feels. So if you go really deep into the oneness, a very safe space, then there can be this immense feeling of love that comes up. And that's what brings the faith in the goodness, because it's such a strong experience.
Well, I'm feeling the love. Would you like to discuss your new book? Is it Soul Story?
Soul Story is my latest book. Yeah, that's I'm working on a new thing at the moment.
Oh my gosh, you must be busy. So thank you for taking the time to talk to me as well.
No, it's a pleasure. It's been lovely. So I think most of what I've been talking about has been this evolutionary. So what's happened, Louis, is I wrote most of my early books were about going through all of the different spiritual traditions, literally from alchemy to Zen, going, look, at the heart of they're very different, but underneath there's a human being who's gone, it's all one, and what really matters is love. And that's true here. Here's Rumi and the Sufis, he's saying that. Mm-hmm. Here's Zhang Tzu and the Taoists. Here's Bodhidharma, the Zen, Chan Buddhists. It's like, oh, there's a common human experience, which then people are understanding in different ways. And there's commonality and there's difference. And it's evolving. The understanding and the experience is evolving. So having written all of those books going, look, here it is, the shamans and the da-da-da, I then started thinking, right, I want to introduce people to this experience, and started doing this practical stuff 20 years ago. But also wanting to go, well, if it's evolving, and if what marks these people out that I love so much is they took what they were given and turned it into something new for their own times. They didn't just repeat it, they created it new. And that's what we must do. So I started that process. And the first part of that was in my book, Deep Awake and Mystery Experience, was to find a new vocabulary to talk about awakening for the 21st century. And then my latest book, Soul Story, takes it on a big jump, because then it's like, okay, now let's ground it. We have The biggest change that's happened is we have science, and it is incredibly powerful. It's allowing us to do this, for instance. So we need to take that very seriously. The problem is that science, which is the most complete thing that human beings have ever done, dismisses spirituality as unreal, and I happen to know that it's not. So how can we? And then you end up so in the common, I would say at the moment in the UK, in the intellectual mainstream, if you like, not most people, but that group who run the culture.
Yeah.
If I say I believe in life after death, there's a real feeling of, oh, really? You're a bit of an idiot then, aren't you? You know,
A
it's a bit
weirdo.
like, yeah, you're a bit woo-woo and,
Woo-woo.
you know, wishful thinking. Not, you know, it's like, you know, so you're not strong enough to face the reality then. That's the way it's thought. My feeling is, I don't think that at all. I think it's perfectly rational, reasonable thing to believe. So what I want to do is create a philosophy which brings the two together and can talk about, like we've done tonight, how we understand things like the immortality of the soul and reincarnation in a way that isn't woo-woo, so that people can hold their head up and go, no, that's an intellectually robust thing to say. It's a beautiful thing, but it's also intellectually robust. It's you know, there's good reasons to think that. It's not, you're not foolish for thinking that. So we can start bringing back into mainstream culture these ancient ideas in a new form.
Well, I think you're doing incredible work. I
Well,
really, really do.
thank you. I'm very touched.
And very much needed, very much needed. Is there anything that I haven't asked you that you'd like to share with the Passion Harvest audience?
Well, we've shared so much.
We've covered a lot, haven't we? But if you feel called
I
to
think,
share something.
yeah, there's, I think one little thing which we might be nice to tie all together, which is, you know, I've been exploring philosophy and evolution and science and all of that, and the ideas and the metaphors. But we started with that experience when I was 12. And that's still the heart. And when I was writing Soul Story, at a certain point towards the end, I suddenly thought, I've got to make a confession here. I've got to make it clear to people. And so I found myself saying, look, make no mistake about it. The underlying thing I'm trying to do here is to present something which is intellectually robust to justify childlike intuitions that arise from me in the deep awake state. And the intuitions themselves are so childlike, and yet they're the deepest things I know. And the phrase I came up with, which captured it at that time for me, was it feels like, yeah, the deepest thing that's in me, below all of the clever ideas, is a conviction that despite everything, life is good, death is safe, and what really matters is love. And that's the underlying message for sure.
It's so beautiful. Well, thank you so much for that. Tim, where's the best place for people to connect with you?
Well, they can find me because my name is strange, Freke, but pronounced Freke.
I pronounced it correctly. And can I just interrupt everyone that's listening? Your details and the links will also be in the show notes. So please go on.
Great. Well, that's the best way to get me is through my website, Facebook, all of that stuff. YouTube, got loads of stuff on my YouTube channel.
You've got some great videos there.
Yeah. And I've been doing this lovely series of talking to other philosophers called What is Life? So that's been real fun. So there's all sorts there. And there's also guided meditations. And if they want to try the gazing, there's a CD available now with some music on that someone's done in the States. So yeah, there's lots of stuff there, and most of it's for free. So just go out and enjoy it. And if you want to find out about the ICU, which I called it the International Community of Unividuals because it shortens to the ICU. Which is
yes, okay.
I know. Yes, see, I was terrible.
I got it. I'm a slow learner.
Oh no! I just couldn't resist it. So it's the ICU, and we meet up every week. Sorry, on a Sunday. Not great timing for Australia, but okay for everywhere else. But there is now a Japanese and Australian group starting, at a better time for those areas. So, just if you're drawn to it, there's plenty, come and explore.
Wonderful. Well, Tim Freke, thank you so much for being on Passion Harvest. It's been really, really a delight to connect with you.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks for the invite.
Thanks, Tim. Bye-bye. If you like this episode, please do subscribe for weekly, passionate, inspirational interviews.